sculptures, skulls, drawings, and paintings reveal the worldwide presence of these black people. In all of the artwork, the black female is very prominent. Her figurines have been discovered in Western Europe, the Mediterranean, Western Asia, India, and in vast parts of the prehistoric New World. Even in our modern era, scattered around the globe, we see descendants of the black woman. For example, in Jordan, India, Southeast Asia, the Philippines, Hawaii, New Guinea, Australia, and Tasmania. We have seen the black woman as mother of the entire human family. We've also charted the course of her descendants around the world. Although she has left to us a global legacy, the black woman's most important and continuous contributions have been made on the continent of Africa. As you can see, it is a huge continent, second only to Asia in size. Let us return then to Africa to see what exciting revelations await us there. In a brilliant article written in the Journal of African Civilization's 1987 edition, Dr. Rosalind Jeffries provides an overview of the image of black women in African cave art. Just as many scholars before her, she found that perhaps the most ancient artwork, dating back 10,000 years, was discovered in the central Sahara region. But other rock paintings were also found in North, East, West, Central, and South Africa. What does this art tell us about ancient African women? According to Jeffries, it presents them in a variety of ways. Some paintings show black women in a symbolic manner as primordial mother or Mother Nature who creates and nurtures all life. Certain sculptured pieces appear to represent fertility and motherhood, which were highly regarded by African people. A number of paintings show women gathered together, wearing curious masks and vulture headdresses. In still other scenes, we find women talking together, posing, dancing, carrying pottery vessels, and relaxing with their children. One of the most popular of the prehistoric paintings is a depiction of two young ladies referred to as Pure women. Their attire is surprisingly similar to modern dress. A universal figure is the horned goddess who is depicted in graceful running strides with horns on her head surmounted by a pot-shaped hat. African legends speak of horns as being symbolic in calling together a nation. As we move toward later historical times, we meet the African woman, but this time she is settled along the Nile River. It was in this region that the most ancient and continuous civilization in the world appears to have arisen. First in Nubia, and then in Egypt. Of course, not all scholars agree on the origin of the Egyptian civilization. In part one of this series, however, we cited a growing body of evidence that points toward a black or Nubian beginning, which is consistent with ancient tradition. In his book, The African Background to Medical Science, Dr. Charles Finch sheds further light on the black roots of Egyptian civilization. He points out that the Egyptians named themselves Kamu, which translates literally as the blacks. Their word for the African land to the south of them was Kentu, or Kentu, denoting the Sudanese peoples who lived there. This word also meant first, foremost, beginning, origin, and chief. The Egyptians also referred to Inner Africa as the Old Country and the Land of the Gods, or as we might say today, God's Country. Furthermore, the Egyptian word for east was the same as their word for left, and their word for west the same as their word for right. Their word for front was the same as the word for south, and the word for back was the same as the word for north. According to Dr. Finch, all of this was possible only if the Egyptians oriented themselves southward and looked in that direction for the land of their origins. Another source of evidence in support of the view that the ancient Egyptians were black people is the Christian Bible. In Genesis, Noah's three sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, are presented as the ancestors of the three main branches of humankind known to biblical writers. Ham is unquestionably the ancestor of the black race, and his name appears to have come from the Egyptian Cam, meaning black. The sons of Ham were listed as follows. Mizraim equals Egypt. Cush was Ethiopia. Canaan was Palestine, and Phut was Libya. It is clear then that also, according to biblical tradition, Egypt was a part of the black or African branch of humanity. Finally, this painting from the tomb of Ramesses III, dating back to about 1200 BC, shows that the ancient Egyptians viewed themselves as blacks and painted themselves as such without confusion with the Indo-Europeans, that is the Caucasians, or the Semites. In Figure A, we have the ancient Egyptians as they viewed themselves. Figure B depicts the Indo-European type. Figure C represents other black Africans, and Figure D represents the Semites. Throughout their history, the ancient Egyptians never depicted themselves by types B or D. In ancient Egypt, Kemet, the black land, as elsewhere in Africa, women were very prominent. Their diverse roles included goddess, queen mother, and pharaoh. We have learned about the great Isis and her tradition, but there were also other black goddesses of distinction. To discuss this, we return to Danita Red Terry in studio.
Was the female god of war and of hunting, and she's probably the oldest known female deity of ancient Egypt. She was depicted often wearing a red crown, I should say, or with two crossed arrows and a shield on her head, signifying her characteristic as a war god. She was also considered to be a devoted mother god. Some of her depictions show her as drawn or depicted as a vulture, and one of the myths that's associated with her, she, as a vulture, pierced her thigh with her beak and drew blood from that and fed her children this blood. Hathor is another mother god, and she was depicted as often as a cow or as a woman with cow-like ears on her head. Her symbols associated with her were the sistrum, and she was often depicted with the pharaohs who saw themselves as Horus reborn, or as the god reborn, would be seen suckling from her as a cow. They would suckle from her tithers, or as a woman in her woman form, they would sit on her and suckle at her breast. And she was also a female god associated with music, with dance, with love, and with sensual pleasures of love also. And the sistrum, which I said was associated with her, was a rattle-like musical instrument. Some of the other female gods include Bast, or Bastet, which was often depicted as having the head of a cat or a head of a female lion, and she was a god of war. You have Mut, who was also sometimes associated as a god of war. She was a regional god of the Thebes, Luxor area, and she was part of a trinity of Khons, which is her son, and Amun, who was a very important deity during the 17th and 18th dynasty period. You have Nut, who was the mother of Isis, and she was a mother goddess who was shown, often depicted as going across the heavens. Her whole body would stretch across the heavens and meet the earth in these depictions, and stars would be scattered about her, and the sun would be in the sky with her. And then you have her daughter Nephthys, who was a guardian female god.